So I did say that I wanted to talk about the evangelical roots in Lutheranism. And for those of you who've been watching my videos for a good while, no, I really don't have a whole lot of good things to say about Martin Luther. I guess I need to go ahead and, before I forget like I did in the last video, do my screen share business here. Oh, and wait a minute. Before I get started with screen share, for those who are new to my videos, what on earth am I doing wearing a potato bag with a yellow star attached to it? Well, for a good while, I've wanted to wear a yellow star while I'm doing the video, but I couldn't figure out how I'm going to do it. Especially, it needs to be on my left shoulder, left side of my, in honor of the Holocaust victims, and in honor of all of those who died at the hands of the Christians. Yes, died at the hands of the Christians. Died at the hands of people who call themselves the replacement of Israel, who were murdered, raped, and pillaged at the hands of the Christians. And so I found a potato sack that was kind of yellow colored, and put it on that. And I do it in the honor of the Holocaust victims. I do it in honors of the victims of the Crusades and the victims of Constantine, who mercilessly, without mercy, persecuted the Jews, burned them alive, drowned them, crucified them, did every sort of evil things that the Romans, the pagan Romans, had done before them. And another reason why I wear a potato sack is, yes, to mock the preachers today who go and wear their mantles, their shawls, or whatever, their pretty little clothing to hide their wickedness, their inward wickedness. And just like Yehoshua said about the Pharisees, these same preachers on the outside are whitened sepulchres, is what they are. So in another sense, I mock them with this potato sack. Anyway, I will continue. I will go to screen share and start off with Luther's canon in Wikipedia. Okay, Luther's canon is the biblical canon attributed to Martin Luther, which has influenced Protestants. Yes, folks, that means you evangelicals too. It means any Protestant group that is outside the Catholic Church, and quite frankly, folks, now I know there's a big difference between the Mennonites, the Amish, and Lutheranism. However, as I pointed out in previous videos, that the Mennonites and the Amish have slouched toward Lutheranism instead of away from it. Being that Martin Luther was also the persecutors of the Mennonites and the Amish. And I also have pointed out that the Mennonites and the Amish, which were called Anabaptists before they became Mennonite or Amish, were originally Sabbath keepers. Many of you who are ex-Mennonite and ex-Amish don't know this. And many of you who are still Amish and Mennonite do not know this. You should dig up in your history. You should do your due diligence and do your own research. Don't depend on your preacher for the truth. He's not going to give it to you. Instead, he wants your money like Balaam did. Anyway, which influenced Protestants since the 16th century Protestant Reformation, while the Lutheran confessions specifically did not define a canon. It is widely regarded as the canon of the Lutheran Church. It differs from the 1546 Roman Catholic canon of the Council of Trent in that it rejects the deuterocanonical books. In other words, the Torah. Okay, and questions even the 7 Testament books. Wow. Now folks, please understand that if all the Protestant religions are rooted in Lutheranism, Lutheranism is also rooted in Catholicism, which is why many of the Protestants that I know, even Baptists, will say that the words of the prophets, they will say in a much gentler way that the words of the prophets don't matter anymore. Well, I always tell them, if the words of the prophets don't matter anymore, then what you're saying is that the words of John, the apostle, in Revelation 10 and verse 7 don't matter anymore. And John said, anyone who takes away from his words in the book of Revelation, well, you can go and read for yourself what he said about that. Okay. And questions the 7 Testament books called, New Testament books called Luther's Antilegomena. I don't even know what that means, 4 of which are still ordered last in the German language Luther Bibles to this day. What in the world is that? As you can see, I don't know anything about the Lutheran Bible, but the Amish and Mennonites do. They use it. Why? Why would you use the Bible of the one who persecuted you? I don't get it. I just don't get it. It makes no sense to me. So I'm going to click this here for just a second. Oh, is a direct transliteration of the Greek, refers to written text whose authenticity or value is disputed. Whose value is disputed? Okay. Eusebius, in his church history, 325, used a term for those Christian scriptures. Now remember, I believe it was around 325 is when the Constantine ordered the, now I forgot what it was, Council of Nicaea, or somewhere in that area. Somewhere in that time frame, used the term for these Christian scriptures that were disputed, literally spoken against. Well, which scriptures did they speak against? In early Christianity, before the closure of the New Testament canon, it is a matter of categorical discussion whether Eusebius divided his books into 3 groups of accepted and heretical, or 4 by adding a spurious group. The disputed writings were widely read in the early church and included the Epistle of James. That proved that the earlier church was on track. You see, Martin Luther had a problem with the Apostle James. He thought he was greater than the Apostle James. He called the Epistle of James an epistle of straw. Remember, all Protestantism is rooted, whether you like it or not, in Martin Luther. The Epistle of Jude, Peter, John, the book of Revelation, and the Gospel of the Hebrews, they all hate the gospel. And I tell you, folks, I warned you that there's one reason only why they reject the Gospel of the Hebrews. Wait a minute. Wasn't Paul, wasn't he the one who wrote the book of Hebrews? Why do they have a problem with the book of Hebrews? I have said over and over and over again that your preacher won't read Hebrews 8, verses 8 through 12. I've told you over, and I told you the reason why. Because it specifically says that the new covenant is for the 12 tribes of Israel, the 2 houses of Israel, for the house of Israel and the house of Judah. They don't want you to know that Jehovah is going to have mercy on the whole house of Israel. They don't want you to know that. But Paul backs it up in Romans 11. beginning with verse 26 through verse 28, I believe it is, maybe to even 29. But every time, like I said before, every time I mention that, the Christians' eyes, they just glaze over because they don't believe that. They want mercy for themselves, but not mercy for the Jews. Think about that for a minute. All right. Spurious books or a spurious group of books? Really? Including the Epistle of James, the Epistle of Jude, Peter, and John, the book of Revelation, the Gospel of the Hebrews, the Epistle of the Hebrews, Apocalypse of Peter, and the Epistle of Barnabas, and I can't. You can see that word. I can't say it. The term disputed should therefore not be misunderstood to be false or heresy. Wait a minute. Dispute? You're going to dispute with Paul? Don't sit here and say that the term disputed should not therefore be misunderstood to mean false or heretical. There was disagreement in the early church on whether or not the respective texts deserved canonical status. In other words, what you wanted to do was diminish what Paul said in in Hebrews 8, verses 8 through 12. It can't be diminished. It can't be taken away. You wanted to diminish the words of John in the book of Revelation, where he talks about the New Jerusalem coming down. The bride of the Messiah is the New Jerusalem, not the church. Paul was just using an example when he was talking about presenting to the people of this particular congregation as a bride of Messiah. But see, the bride of Messiah is the whole of New Jerusalem, all that are coming in. That particular group, that particular church was merely a portion of it, not the whole. And guess what? In order to enter into the New Jerusalem, you have to be grafted in among the branches. That's what Paul said in Romans 11. So what they wanted to do is they want to call into question the book of Revelation. Yet, John said, anyone who takes away or adds to it, you can read it. But yet here it is. Now I have to ask you evangelicals, you Lutherans, you Amish, you Mennonite, all of you, are you participating in this? Are you participating in the diminishing of the words in these books? Now, let me go to the words. I want to stay right here for a minute. I want to go to the words of Peter real quick, and I'll get back to what I'm doing here, because this is very important. All right. Words of Paul, that's it. Let me see. I'm trying to remember how to get to this particular passage. For those who are not unlearned, or for those who are unlearned. Come on. Oh, that's the reason. I misspelled it. Folks, please be patient with me as I'm doing this. All right, here we go. 2 Peter 3:16. And they deliberately misinterpret the words of Peter. They actually say the very opposite of what Peter said. So let me point out to you what Peter really said in this passage. We'll start in verse 15, and account that the long suffering of our Messiah is salvation, even like our beloved brother Paul. So the first thing that he says, just like our beloved brother Paul. So he is saying that the long suffering of our Messiah is salvation, even like our beloved brother Paul, also according to wisdom given unto him, that he writes to you. So he is complimenting Paul and Paul's infinite wisdom that he wrote unto the Hebrews that Peter is speaking to at this point. As also in all his epistles. So he's saying that Paul in all his epistles is speaking correctly. He backs up Paul 100%. Speaking in them these things, in which are some things difficult to be understood by whom? He didn't say difficult to be understood by him. He didn't say difficult to be understood by those who seek the truth. No, he said by those that are unlearned and unstable. So those that are unlearned and unstable wrestle. They wrestle with the words of Paul just like they do all the other scriptures. And they do it to their own destruction. Bam! That's not what the preacher told you. Now I can go back to where I was. Where was I? Is it right here? Is it right here? Oh, yes. Now, among the disputed writings, which nevertheless recognized by many, are extant the so-called Epistle of James. So-called Epistle of James? What kind of talk is that? It's not a so-called epistle. It is the Epistle of James. James was right. And that of Jude. Also the second epistle of Peter. And those that are called the second, and where was I? Where was I? Was I in second? Was I just in the second epistle of Peter? Was I? I don't even remember. I'll have to go look back. But those of you who are watching, you know where I was. And the second and the third of John, whether they belong to the evangelist or another person of the same name. So they don't even believe that Peter or John wrote these things. Interesting. Among the rejected writings must be reckoned also the Acts of Paul. Why? Didn't I say in previous videos that the Christians have rejected the words of Paul? Didn't I say so? Romans 11. Didn't I say so? Well, this proves me right. And the so-called shepherd and the apocalypse of Peter, they reject the words of Peter when Peter warned about what was going to happen to these people who do wicked, who do all these evil things that they did not only in medieval Europe, but they are doing today right now in modern Europe and modern United States and modern Western civilization. They're going to reject that too? Well, just exactly what the Messiah said, as in the days of Noah. Wow. See, I haven't gone to these churches, or that many of them. So, fortunately for me, I haven't been brainwashed by them. So this is mind-boggling to me. In addition to these, to the extent the epistle of Barnabas and the so-called teachings of the apostles, so-called, is this how far the churches have gone off the track? Folks, I'm not trying to be funny here, but this is new to me. I mean, I knew they were off the track, but this far? Really? And I ask those of you who are listening right now, you are going to attend those congregations? Really? Why? Why would you? Oh my goodness. And among these, some have placed also the gospel according to the Hebrews, with which those of the Hebrews that have accepted Messiah are especially delighted. And among these have placed also, why? You know why? Because they don't want the Hebrews to have salvation. That's why. And all these may be reckoned among the disputed books. The epistle to the Hebrews had earlier been listed. It is not indeed right to overlook the fact that some have rejected the epistle to the Hebrews, saying that it is disputed by the church in Rome on the ground that it was not written by Paul. Folks, wake up. Wake up, people. You need to go and see how far the people you are running with have gone away from the truth. And this is why I'm saying Lutheranism is rooted in Catholicism, and all Protestantism is now rooted in Lutheranism. I'm just trying, please, folks, please listen. I have said over and over again that the Gentile church has rejected the words of Paul. Paul was their only apostle. They rejected the words of Paul. And I was able to prove it just based upon Romans 11 alone. And now we find out that they've rejected the words of Paul. They rejected the words of John. They rejected the words of Jude. They rejected the words of Peter. They rejected the words of all the apostles. And if they reject the words of all the apostles, it is no wonder that they rejected the words of Yehoshua and replaced him with Jesus, Christos. It is no wonder. Because they won't have a Jewish Messiah rule over them. They got to have one with a Greek or Roman name, not a Hebrew name. You see. So let's look down here at Reformation. During the Reformation, Luther brought up the issue of the I don't even know what this means, among the church fathers. Well, they're not supposed to call themselves fathers anyway, were they? Isn't that written in one of the Gospels? And none of the New Testament books of the canon of Trent was rejected from Luther's canon. The terminology remains in use today since he questioned Hebrews. So what did Martin Luther do? The father of Protestantism. What did he do? He followed in the ways of the Catholics by questioning the books of Hebrews, James, Jude, and Revelation. These books are sometimes termed Luther's Anti-Gemona. What does that mean? I need to go and look this up in Google and find out, I guess. Or let's do that. A direct transliteration of the Greek refers to written text whose also that authenticity or value is disputed. So, okay, so that's what that means. So these are the books that he disputes. So I'm warning you folks, if you're disputing with these books, you are disputing with the new covenant. And if you dispute with the new covenant, you have no part of it. If, once again, if you are a follower of these people who dispute Hebrews, James, Jude, and Revelation, let's go to the book of Revelation, shall we? What was it that Peter said again? About, oh my goodness, I can't even type. I almost cut my finger off, which is why I'm typing so badly here. Oh, is it Revelation 1, I think? I'm not sure. Add. Anyone who adds. There we go. Revelation 22:18. For I testify unto every man, that includes Martin Luther and those who follow him, and all the Catholics and those who follow that man at the Vatican, and all you evangelicals, you Baptists, you Methodists, every one of you, Amish or Mennonite alike, this is everyone. I testify to everyone that hears the words of the prophecy of this book. If any man shall add unto these things, Jehovah shall add unto him the plagues that are written in the book. Verse 19. And if any man shall take away or diminish from the words of the book of this prophecy, Jehovah will take away his part out of the book of life. You will have removed yourself from the new covenant, and your name will be erased out of the book of life. Period. So who among you now wants to go ahead and follow Martin Luther, the man at the Vatican, and all these Protestant groups, while claiming you have some sort of a relationship with a person you know not? And why would you be a follower of these groups knowing this now? Why would you do this? Why? Because you want to be liked. You want to be accepted by men and women. Yes, and women. Or are you willing to sacrifice your relationship with your parents, your wife, your husband, or even your own children for the sake of the truth? Because if you reject any lie and accept only the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, what's going to happen is you will be rejected by members of your family. You will be rejected by members of your community, and you will be rejected by the leaders and members of your own congregation. You will. You will. I know this from a personal experience. So, and I deviated. Wow, okay, so current Lutheran usage expands this to include 2 Peter, 2 John, and 2 and 3 John. Wow, really? 2 Peter. What in the world is in 2 Peter that Martin Luther has such a big problem with? Remember, the Catholic Church has done this already too, but what happened was initially Martin Luther started off just disputing, but then started rejecting all of these. 2 Peter. See? I'm not a Lutheran, never been a Lutheran, so I don't even know what he's talking about. So I've got to go look at this. I wanted to go to 2 Peter, start in verse 1. Make your calling sure. Remember these things. We are eyewitnesses, all right? Prophecy, okay? So he's talking about prophecy in the first part, okay? Oh, well, look what we have here. 2 Peter 2, false prophets. But there were some false prophets among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you who will privately bring in. Oh, is this the reason why they disregard 2 Peter? Well, isn't that interesting? Even denying the Messiah Yehoshua who bought them, or denying Jehovah who bought them. How would they do that? How would they do that? By denying his name. Jehovah is the Father and Yehoshua is the Son. Within the name of the Son is the name of the Father. Within the name of the Son is the word salvation. Yehoshua means Jehovah is salvation. Jesus does not mean Jehovah is salvation. It means something else, and you should do your due diligence to find out what it does mean. So what they did, what he's saying, 2 Peter 2 is saying, is they replaced the name of both the Father and the Son, thereby denying his name, denying the one that bought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. And many shall follow their pernicious ways. And indeed they did. This is exactly what I was just talking about, folks. And in order to hide their crimes, they diminish or reject 2 Peter outright. By reason of whom the way to truth will be evil spoken of. How do they speak evil of the truth? They spoke evil of Israel. They spoke evil of the Messiah. In the words of in Hebrews, which is another book they rejected, Paul said that the new covenant is for the house of Israel and the house of Judah. That's the truth. But they spoke evil of that. They rejected that. They say that the church replaces the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And it is in this way they spoke evil of the truth. And they're bringing themselves swift destruction and shall follow their pernicious ways. And that's people. That is, the general populace followed these false prophets' pernicious ways. By the way the truth shall be evil spoken of, and through covetousness. Covetousness, folks. With fake words, they make merchandise out of you. Yes, they want your money. They will say anything to get your money. They will tell you that you have to tithe, when the tithe was only to the temple, at the temple, in the Levitical priesthood. So then they will call themselves Levites. But as is written in the book of Hebrews, the Levitical priesthood is no more. So how can they call themselves Levites? You see? They make merchandise out of you. They buy and sell you. This is what they've done. Literally. Taking your money and you selling your souls to them, hoping you're going to be saved. And those who do this, whose judgment now of a long time lingers not, and their damnation slumbers not. They don't like 2 Peter 2. No, because the 2 Peter 2 talks about them. Read all of 2 Peter 2, will you please? And look at those scriptures they don't want you to see. Yes. So what is it in the book of, is it James? Wow, I mean, this is, wow. See, folks, I could go on for hours. I can go on for hours with this, folks, but I don't have the time to do that. Wow. See, during the Reformation, Luther brought up the issue among the church fathers that about this dispute. And none of the New Testament books of the canon of Trent was rejected from the Luther's canon. The terminology remains in use today. Since he questioned Hebrews, James, Jude, and Revelation, these books are sometimes termed as Luther's disputed. He doesn't agree with it. Current Lutheran usage expands this to also include 2 Peter, 2 John, and 3 John. The term for this classification of the Pauline epistles, classing all of Romans, 1st and 2nd Corinthians, and Galatians as, what is that word? See, this is how they deceive people with these big words that I don't even know. Compare. In other words, it's basically the same thing. Disputed. Acknowledges as authoritative and canonical from the earliest time. Compare. And let's look at this word again. I want to make sure that I'm saying the right thing here. Yeah. Refers to written text whose authenticity or value is disputed. Dangerous, dangerous, dangerous ground Protestantism is walking on, folks. Extremely dangerous. Codex Sinaiticus, a 4th century text and possibly one from the 50 Bibles of Constantine, includes the Shepherd of Hermas and the Epistle of Barnabas, the original Peshitta, New Testament portion, 5th century, excluded 2nd and 3rd John, 2nd Peter, Jude, and Revelation. What a shame. Okay. So classing Romans, the Pauline epistles, Romans, Corinthians, Galatians as disputed, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, Philemon as disputed. Or let's look at this word, because this is a little different from this word. Oh, and pastoral epistles as spurious writings. Okay, the pastoral epistles are 3 books of the canonical New Testament: the 1st epistle to Timothy, the 2nd epistle to Timothy, and the epistle to Titus. They were presented as letters from Paul, the apostle, to Timothy and to Titus. So they're considered as spurious. Remember what Peter said, that those who dispute, who wrestle with the words of Paul, they do so with all the scriptures, because they are unlearned and they are unstable. And they do these things to their own destruction. So now, today, I finally get it. After all these years, I finally get it. I get it. I see it now. I see what happened. And I'm astonished. I don't even know what to do with this information, folks. It only proves that I was right all along, that the churches have absolutely rejected the words of the apostles. They did. And Peter said, those who take Paul's words out of context, they wrestle with the words of Paul, they reject the words of Paul, they do so to their own destruction. He said it. And that's the reason why they have to get rid of the words of Peter too, as well. And they claim that Peter was the first king of Rome. Are you serious? They reject Peter. It was a different person. They're fakes and frauds, folks. So back in the beginning, what was the problem that they had with the book of Hebrews? See, the Gospel of Hebrews is in this, okay? So what is the problem that they have with the book of Hebrews? Well, we already know what the problem they had with this, with 2 Peter. 2 Peter was pointing at the very people. He was pointing the finger at them. So what was the problem with the book of Hebrews? I will show you the problem that they had with the book of Hebrews. Hebrews 8. Verse 7, for if that first covenant had been faultless, then there should have no place been sought for the second. For finding fault with them, that is Israel, he said, behold, the days come, says Jehovah, not the Lord, Jehovah. I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Yehudah, Jews. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, says Jehovah. For this is the covenant that I will make with the church. Is that what it says? No. The house of Israel and the house of Judah. With the whole house of Israel after those days. After what days? After the time of the Gentiles have come to an end, as written by Paul himself in Romans 11, verses 25 through 27, 28, whatever. I will put my Torah in their mind and write them in their hearts. And I will be to them a Elohim, and they shall be to me a people. You see, Christianity today rejects that. And you have to reject mainstream Christianity if you want the truth. It's just that simple, folks. And they shall no more teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know Jehovah, for they shall all know me from the least unto the greatest. For I will be, here's the word that they really don't like, because they didn't practice mercy. And you Mennonites and you Amish, you know they didn't practice mercy. You know this, because you were a victim of them too. You have a nice big giant book called The Martyr's Mirror with at least 1,500 pages of what they did to you. Now that book is nothing compared to what they did to the Jews. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness. The Christians were not merciful to the Jews' unrighteousness, were they? No. Then how can they stand before Jehovah in judgment and be spared? They can't. I'm sorry. They can't. And their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. The Christians have accused the Jews of their sins and their iniquities for the past 2,000 years, refusing to forget the iniquities of the Jews. And therefore, how in the world is Jehovah going to forget the iniquities of the Christians? In that he says, a new covenant has he made, the first one old. Now that which decays and waxes old is ready to vanish away. Now, where did he get that from? He got it from Jeremiah 31. Oh. New covenant. The new covenant written in the prophets? Yes. Where did Paul get this from? He got it from the prophets. Why do you think they don't like the words of Paul in Hebrews? Why? Because they reject the words of the prophets. Behold, days come, saith the Lord. Is that what it says right here? No, it does not say that. Let's go look in Strong's Concordance and let's see what it says. Behold, the days come, saith, what does that say? I'm going to put it out there in nice big letters so everyone can see. Here's your phonetic spelling and phonetic speaking. Yehovah. Not the Lord. Jehovah. Jehovah is the Father. Yehoshua is the Son. Now, we'll go back to it. Behold, the days come, saith Jehovah, that I will make a new covenant with the church. Does it say that? The house of Israel, and with the house of Judah, the Jews. Yehudah. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land. That sounds an awful lot like what Paul was repeating to the Hebrews, doesn't it? Which my covenant they broke. Well, Paul said they didn't continue in this covenant. Same thing. Although I was a husband unto them, says Jehovah. See that word Jehovah again? I'm going to rub that in your face until you start saying it, folks. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days. After what days? After he returns their captivity. When he returns their captivity. After the time of the Gentiles is over, as written in Romans 11, verse 26, 27, 25, 26, 27, and as is written in Daniel 2 and Daniel 7. So that's Jehovah. Yeah, that's right. There it is again, Jehovah. I will put my, what does that say? Torah. I will put my Torah in their inward parts and write it in their hearts. And you want to say that the Torah doesn't matter anymore? And I will be their Elohim, not God, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know Jehovah, for they all shall know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith Jehovah. For I will do what? Forgive, pardon their iniquity, and will remember their sin no more. And no more remember their sin. So I'm going to ask each and every one of you who are watching this video, to examine yourself. I'm not the one for you to confess to. You need to confess to our Father in heaven, whose name is Jehovah. You need to examine yourself and see which side are you on. I have exposed your preachers. No, it is not I that have exposed your preachers. Peter, Paul, and the apostles have exposed your preachers. I'm just pointing it out. And I know that each and every one of you that are watching this video is intelligent enough to know that that is true. So the next question is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to do the right thing and face being rejected by your mother and your father, or face the possibility of being rejected by your mother and your father, face the possibility of being rejected by your brothers and sisters, and face being rejected by your husband or your wife, and face being rejected by your own sons and daughters? Or are you going to ignore the truth and reject the new covenant? The covenant that was specifically designed for the house of Israel and the house of Judah. That's your choice to make. I'm just trying to present you with the truth, the whole truth, and the unadulterated truth, unadulterated by your church fathers as they claim to be. And I'm not asking anyone for money. In fact, if anyone would try to give me money for this, I would absolutely and resoundingly reject it, because that would be the way of Balaam. The way of Balaam, folks, that's what your preachers, that's the way they follow. The way of Cain, which was the murder of the brethren. That's the way of Cain that one of the apostles had wrote about. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Look at this, way of Cain. Jude, yes, that was one of them. That was disputed, right? The way of Cain, Jude 1:11. Woe unto them, for they have gone the way of Cain. This Christianity, that's what they've done. They went the way, they murdered anyone who didn't agree with them. That's the way of Cain. They ran greedily after the error of Balaam for money. Yes. And they perished in the gainsayings of Korah. What was Korah's deal? Well, this is what the guy at the Vatican does. He calls himself Father. He thinks that he replaces our Father in heaven somehow by calling himself Father, and every one of his preachers, they call themselves Father too. See, Korah thought he was a replacement for Moses. The gainsayings of Korah is in fact replacement theology that all Christianity practices today. Replacement of everything. Replacement of the Father, replacement of the Son. Replacement of the Son with a different name than what was given to him when he was born, thereby rejecting what the name means. Jehovah is salvation. Then replacing Israel with the church. See, Korah thought he was going to replace Moses, you see. Those of you who do not know what the gainsayings of Korah was all about. The Korah, Moses was a testator of the Old Covenant. Yehoshua, Messiah, is a testator of the New Covenant. And so Korah tried to replace Moses, just like the Gentiles are trying to replace or attempted to replace Israel's Messiah, whose name is Yehoshua, with a Gentile Messiah whose name is Jesus. Gainsayings of Korah, the way of Balaam, or the way of Cain ran greedily after the way of Balaam for reward, for money, preaching for money. And they speak evil of those things which they know not, but only what they know naturally, because they're brute beasts. In these things they corrupt themselves. Yes. So what you have in the Catholic Church and many other congregations are a bunch of sexual perverts running rampant through their congregations. Woe unto them, for they are, for they have gone the way of Cain, ran greedily after their Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsayings of Korah. These are spots in your feasts of charity when they feast with you, feeding themselves on you without fear. Clouds they are without water, carried about by the winds. Trees whose fruit are withered, without fruit, twice dead, plucked up by the roots, raging waves of the sea, foaming at their own shame. Wandering stars, to whom is reserved a blackness of darkness forever. And why in the world would you want to follow them into the blackness and darkness forever? Why would you want to do that? And why would you want to subject your children to that? And Enoch, also the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these sayings, said, behold, Jehovah comes with myriads. That's what the word is. Myriads of his holy people. You know, the ones that the Christians slaughtered throughout the last 2,000 years. To execute judgment upon all, and to convict all that are unpious among them, that are all that are with their unpious deeds, which they have unpiously committed. And all of their hard speeches, harsh speeches, calling the Jews rats, blood libeling, just like the words of Martin Luther in his book, The Jews and Their Lies, if you want to go and read it. Hard speeches against the Jews. Which unpious sinners have spoken against him. These are the murmurers, complainers, walking after their own lust, and their mouth speaks great swelling words, just like Martin Luther did, having men's persons in admiration because they take advantage. Yes. Yes, Martin Luther was a Catholic priest, and he switched, and he took advantage of his position as a Catholic priest in order to do so, to get a larger following. He did. But that doesn't absolve the Catholics of anything. It's just merely describing what he did. And beloved, remember you the word, verse 17, which were spoken of before of the apostles of our master Yehoshua Messiah, how that they told you that there will be mockers in the last days, and they should walk after their own ungodliness. So why did Martin Luther call the book of James an epistle of straw? I will show you why, folks. First of all, let's see if I can find out where he said epistle of straw. And there's a whole host, like I said, I can't, this takes too much time for me to go through all this. Let me see here. Epistle of Paul, epistle of straw. Oh, there it is. All right. It is well known that Luther deemed it impossible to harmonize the two epistles in this article and characterized the Epistle of James as an epistle of straw because it had no evangelical character. Martin Luther's description of the Epistle of James changes. Let's see here, and that's how I got onto this right here. Anyway, you see. Luther made an attempt to remove the books, Hebrews, James, and Jude, and Revelation from the canon. Notably, he perceived them to go against certain Protestant doctrines. But his final judgment of Luther was not generally accepted among his followers. However, these books are ordered last in the German language. In other words, you Amish and you Mennonites, you have this Lutheran Bible. I know you do. What he's saying is these books are ordered least in the German language Luther Bible to this day because they are characterized as at least. So what was his problem with the book of James? All right. James, did I just... Okay, let's go to the book of James. And see, looky here, folks. James, a servant of Jehovah, and Master Yehoshua Messiah to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greetings. Well, that's one reason. That's one reason. My brethren, count it all joy when you fall into different temptations, knowing that the trying of your faith works patience. But let patience have her perfect work, and that you be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. Okay, so he's talking about contrast of the rich and the poor. Let the brother of low degree rejoice in that he is exalted. So the one who is poor and down on his luck, rejoice because you will be exalted. But the rich, in that he is made low, because the flower of the grass, he's going to pass away. So the rich need to understand that when they die, he's going to end up in the same state as the poor. For the sun is no sooner risen than a burning heat, but it is withered the grass, and the flower thereof falls, and the grace of the fashion of it perishes. So shall the rich man fade away in his ways. All right, perseverance and temptation. And let no man say when he is tempted, I am that Jehovah did it to him. For Jehovah cannot be tempted with evil, therefore neither tempts any man. Well, the word tempt here is different than what it's talking about, the hour of temptation. The hour of temptation is our hour of trial, when he's going to put the nations, the Gentiles, on trial. Let me go look in Strong's Concordance here. It may be the same word, but it's a different meaning. Piradzo, to make proof. What it says to attempt or test or tempt. All right. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away from his own lust and enticed. What he's saying is, it's your fault. You're tempted by evil. This is different than the hour of temptation. Then when lust has conceived, it brings forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, brings forth death. Do not err, my beloved brethren, for every good gift and every perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights, whom there is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. And of his own will in the future beget, will give birth to us in the future with the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. Well, that didn't describe the so-called church fathers, did it? They were swift to wrath. like Martin Luther. For the wrath of man does not work the righteousness of Jehovah. So the wrath that came from Martin Luther's book did not come from Jehovah. Martin Luther's book to the Jews and their lies. For this reason, lay apart all filthiness and superfluity of naughtiness, wickedness, and receive with meekness the engrafted word, the implanted word, which is able to save your souls. Now this is really where Martin Luther had a big problem. So did the Catholics, and so does all the Protestants, quite frankly. Be you doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving your own self. So if you're only hearers of the word and do not do the word, you've only deceived yourselves, he's saying. For he that is a hearer of the word and not a doer is like a man who beholds his natural face in a glass, and he beholds himself, natural face in a mirror. And he looks at himself, and then he goes his way, and straightway forgets the manner of man he was. But whosoever looks into the perfect law of liberty, and continues therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed. Oh, boy, this is where Martin Luther gets really uncomfortable. For any man among you seem religious, and bridles not his tongue, he deceives his own heart. This man's religion is worthless. You see, Martin Luther didn't bridle his tongue when he cursed the Jews. And your preachers who diminish the Jews in their sermons every Sunday, they do not bridle their tongue in their hatred for the Jews. Their religion is worthless. Pure religion is this. Pure religion and undefiled is not that you go to church. It is what the Messiah talked about in Matthew 25. Before Jehovah, the Father is this, to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unspotted from the world. That is true religion. So I guess this is the epistle of straw. And of course, this is the one he hates the most. Faith and works. What does it profit, my brethren, verse 14 in James 2, though a man say he has faith and have not works? Can faith alone save him? If a brother or a sister is naked, here we go with Matthew 25. Why do we have to go to Matthew 25 again? For I was hungry and you gave me meat. Now, remember, James is an apostle to the Hebrews. What does it profit, my brethren? If a man say he has faith and has not works, can faith save him? If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto him, depart in peace, and you are yourself warmed and filled, notwithstanding you don't give them those things which are needful to the body, what does it profit? Even so, faith, if it has not works, is dead, being by itself. Now, because of this, this is the one scripture, one passage of James that Martin Luther rejected. So where did James get this from? He got it from the Messiah in Matthew 25. Verse 31, when the Son of Man shall come in his glory, and all the holy angels with him, and he shall sit on the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all nations, Gentiles, is what it means. Ethnos means Gentiles, a race or a nation of people as distinct from Israel, as you see right there. If you have good eyes, you can see it. And he shall separate one from another, as a shepherd divides his sheep from the goats, and he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on the left. And then the king shall say unto them on his right hand, Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation. Why? Because I was hungry and you gave me meat. I was thirsty and you gave me. See, if you reject the words of James 2, where he says in verse 18, yes, a man may say, you have faith and I have works. Show me faith without works, and I will show you my faith by my works. Okay? And now, wait a minute. What does it profit, my brethren, though a man shall say he hath faith and have not works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto them, Depart in peace, and be ye warmed and filled, notwithstanding you give them not those things which are needful to the body, what does it profit? Even so, faith, if it has not works, is dead, being by itself. All he's doing is saying the very same thing that the Messiah said. What does the Messiah said to those who may have claimed that they had faith, but did not do those things which are needful for the body? He says in verse 41, Then shall he say unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, you cursed, into the everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me no meat. And the least of his brethren are the Jews. Because by default, they are the Jews. Why? Because right here it says, verse 31, when the Son of Man shall come in his throne of glory, and all the holy angels with him, and he shall sit on the throne of his glory, and before him shall be gathered all the Gentiles, the nations. So the other people, by default, are the Jews. And this is how he's going to gather the righteous out of the nations. James was right. Therefore, Martin Luther was wrong. Not only was he wrong, he put himself on Peter's list of destruction. So I ask you, why then are you following the doctrines of Martin Luther? Why? Why are you doing that? Why? Why would you follow him on his path to destruction? Why? Why Protestants? Why evangelicals? Why Amish? Why are you Mennonites? Why are you doing this? Why? Only you can answer that question. I don't know the reason why. I really don't, except for its deception. I don't understand it. I don't get it. And I have to thank my dad. I have to thank my dad for removing me from this deception as a child at a year old. Otherwise, I might be deceived as well.